All right, so welcome everyone back to our webinar. Today is going to be focused on maximizing memory or improving your memory. I want to go specifically into a memory technique. Somebody asked, is it possible to get the recording? If you need the recording, shoot me an email and I'll get you that recording. And just say, hey, I couldn't make it or I couldn't see the whole thing. Definitely shoot me an email. The email is just, again, paul@irisreading.com. Hopefully you remember my name and the domain, irisreading.com, paul@irisreading.com. Since we're talking about memory, repetition is important, right? If I take away the slide, some of you may have already forgotten my name. Happens. It's okay. I've forgotten names. It can be embarrassing forgetting someone's name, right? You ever have someone tell you their name, immediately you forget? That can be very embarrassing. So yesterday we talked about how as readers, we want to have a decent speed. We want to have decent comprehension and we want to have decent retention. I want to remember what I've read. Otherwise, it would feel like I've wasted my time, reading a whole book, right? That could be hours and hours of wasted time or feel like it wasted. We're going to be focusing on the retention side of things here. And by the way, we're shooting for half an hour, but I promise to give you a little extra time afterwards for Q&A. Let's get right into it. So how to improve retention? First and foremost, when we're reading, the easiest thing you can do is to inspect what you read. If you stuck around for the Q&A yesterday, we talked a little bit about this. The idea is before I read something, I want to get like the gist of it. How do we do that? You have a short article like this. Before you read the whole thing, you read the first sentence of each paragraph. Why? I mean, you may already know why. The first sentence is almost always going to be the main idea, right? Not always, but usually it is. That's how we were all taught to write. Now, by the way, I say main idea. Some people call it a topic sentence or an introduction. Same idea. If you did this on an article like this, we got India's skills famine. You read the first sentence of each paragraph, you would find out right away that this article is not only about India, but a shortage of skilled labor. They're talking about the economy, education. You get like a few big points. And then step two is, now we're going to read it. Or don't read it. Maybe it's not worth your time. I use this all the time, this idea of inspecting to filter out necessary reading versus unnecessary reading. And for those of you that are no longer in school, like myself, you're not being told what to read. You have to kind of choose. And sometimes you ever read something that was kind of a waste of time, maybe it wasn't worth the time. Think about all the business books that are out there that are like 300 pages that could really be condensed into like 40 pages. The truth is, you could come up with the greatest business book ever, and if it was only 43 pages, no one is going to publish it. Even if those were like 43 of the most efficiently written pages in the world, every major publisher would be like, yeah, we need to beef it up a little bit. They can't justify a $15 or $20 price or more for a hardcover if it's only 43 pages. So sometimes inspecting can save you tons of time by just not reading the material. Now, let's say you do want to read the material. Let's say it is worth your time. You inspect all the first sentences, you get the main ideas. Now you could read this, and what's going to happen to your speed? You will read it faster. What's going to happen to your comprehension? You'll understand it better. And retention, well, what we remember is a function of repetition. So I'll remember something better if I get multiple exposures to that information. Well, when you inspect, that's one exposure, one repetition, and now I read. That's another exposure. If you want more repetition, you do maybe some note taking and things like that. By the way, we have a great note taking course. If you go to our website, and I mentioned this yesterday, this is a shameless plug. We've got a lot of great courses that go a little more in depth on things. If you're interested in note taking, go to the website, click on online courses, and we have a whole course on note taking. So you do this, you get your main ideas. Now, this is not how you should inspect everything. Sometimes you're dealing with a chapter in a book, and that chapter might be 20, 30, 40, it might be 50 or more pages. Don't read the first sentence of each paragraph. That's too tedious. What you would do instead is you're going to read the intro, headings, subheadings, boldface words, anything that's maybe a table, chart, diagram, picture, looking at the titles, captions of those. You don't dive into details because we're just getting the gist of it. I'm reading my conclusion. I'm going to read just the big parts, these things. And now, after I do this, I'm ready to read. So I want to introduce you to why our organization is called IRIS. It's an acronym for this process, which we call the IRIS method, which starts with an inspection. Then you read, Then you inquire about what you've read, so you ask questions, and then you figure out, how am I going to store this information? Asking questions, by the way, this is like a moment of reflection to be like, okay, what did I read? What are the most important parts? Do I need to what do I need to memorize? And then how am I going to memorize? Let's get into that. First, repetition obviously helps you remember. So in reading, nobody wants to read chapter 5 times. I want to read chapter 5 once, and I want to understand it and remember it as best as possible. So how do we get this idea of repetition involved? What we do is this process. We inspect it. That's a repetition. We read. That's more repetition. By the way, you could get even more by taking notes in between or during these processes. So we inspect, take some notes. Read, take some notes. Now I'm inquiring. That is still another repetition where I'm actively thinking, what did I just read? What are the biggest points? What do I got to memorize? And then I'm actively trying to memorize specific things, whatever those might be. So let's talk about memory here. What influences it? Obviously, repetition is one thing, but what else? There's something called association. When you associate one thing to another thing, that bridge or association helps strengthen the memory. Look at these 10 digits here. If you had to memorize them, I mean, you could if you stare at it long enough, if you write it down, if you repeat it over and over again, repetition will help. But by the way, I'd be surprised if you had all 10 digits memorized here. I didn't expect you to, but if you got some of them or all of them, great. Here's the thing. What if I showed you this number? This as opposed to that. What is easier to memorize? I think we'd all agree the bottom number is way easier to memorize. Why? Part of it is because of, it's broken up into parts, and that's called chunking, by the way. Remember how you spelled Wednesday when you were little? Like the way you learned to spell Wednesday, you'd break it down. Wednesday. It doesn't sound that way, but that's called chunking. So this is chunked, that makes it easier. But the other reason this bottom one is easier is because it looks like a phone number, right? Phone numbers, that association that you have of looking at that bottom number and saying, oh, that's a phone number. Even though the numbers are exactly the same. Some people don't even realize that until now. They're like, oh yeah, they are the same. But the top one looks harder. It's because of association. So you associate that to a phone number, that's one association. Another association is you associated it to maybe you know this area code. That's a Chicago area code. By the way, don't bother calling this number. I totally made it up. But what else influences your memory? Association, repetition. There's also something called visualization. That's just your ability to visualize something that isn't really in front of you. Like if I said visualize a glass of water, I've got a glass of water right over here. I mean, you can visualize what that would look like, or a cup of coffee. Or if I say visualize a family member, could be your mom, dad, brother, sister. We can visualize them even though they are not presently in front of us. They call that your mind's eye. And this is going to help us with memory. Apologies for the creepy images, but the your mind's eye is just your ability to see things in your mind. Visualization is the reason you forget someone's name, but you remember their face, right? Happens. This ever happened, right? You meet someone and you forgot the name. Also, visualization, that's the reason companies have a logo. It's because your visual recall is better than your verbal recall. Now, there's one more thing that affects your memory in a big way, and that is the fact that you remember things that are weird. I mean, that's why at some point McDonald's decided let's use a clown to help sell cheeseburgers. That doesn't make any sense. How about what if I told you Geico? What do you think of? The company Geico. A lot of people, I mean, if you're here in the US where they sell insurance, I'm not sure in what other countries they sell insurance, but Geico reminds them of this talking lizard, the talking gecko that has, I think it's a British accent. And think about that. That doesn't make any sense, a talking lizard, but they do it on purpose. And of course, there's a lot of repetition involved in advertising, right? You hear the ads if you're listening to a podcast or the radio, you see the ads on billboards. If you're watching TV or on YouTube, you see more. I mean, the fact that they advertise like crazy, that's a ton of repetition too, right? So repetition plus association plus visualization, and I would call this exaggeration, or the fact that we remember weird stuff. We're going to use that to our advantage. So how are we going to store information? Let's make a general association. Let's say you read this book. I have it in front of me here, Brain Rules. It's 300 pages or so. You finish it, and now you decide, I got to memorize the so-called brain rules. Maybe you're doing a presentation on it, and you got to remember to talk about, okay, first you got to talk about exercise, then survival. Chapter 3 was about wiring. 4 is attention. 5 is short-term memory, long-term memory, sleep, stress, sensory integration, vision, music, and exploration. How in the world would we memorize this? Well, one way is just write it down a bunch or repeat it over and over again, or try to come up with some fancy acronym for all. I'm not that creative. So I'm going to show you how you can memorize it. And I already have it memorized. I mean, I could close my eyes and tell you this. And I mean, you might think I'm cheating. I'm not holding a paper to my hand, but I can tell you that 1 is exercise, 2 is survival, 3 is wiring. I could go out of order. 7 is, let's see here, 7 is sleep, 6 is long-term memory, 5 is short-term memory. I can tell you that 9 is sensory integration, 10 is vision, or I can tell you that survival is 2, 11 is music, 12 is exploration. Anyway, I know these inside out. Whether or not you believe me, besides the point. Let me show you how I know them. I'm going to teach you the method I use to memorize this, and I use the same method to memorize all sorts of things. And this is just one method. There are other methods too, but we're going to talk about this one method because it's so quick and easy to learn. It's called the numeric peg system. And I love talking about this because it's fast to learn it and pretty easy to apply. The way the numeric peg system works is you take numbers and you associate them visually with things. So number 1 is a pencil. Number 2 is a swan. Number 3 is McDonald's. Hold on, back up. Why are we doing this? Back up. 1 is a pencil because the number 1 has the same shape as a pencil. That's all. Number 2 is a swan because it kind of looks like a swan. Do you see that? I want you to commit that to memory. 1 is pencil, 2 is swan. You see that long neck of the swan there? Okay, let's move on to 3. 3 is going to be McDonald's. You got to look at the arches sideways here. 3 is McDonald's. I am going to quiz you on this, so please make sure you're paying attention. 3 is McDonald's. 4 is a chair. It's upside down. You see the seat of the chair? The legs are over here, and the backrest is over there. I know some people do 4s like this. I make my 4s like that, so looks more like a chair. Moving on to 5. 5's a hook, also upside down. It's a pirate's hook. Do you see the curvy part of the hook right there? I'm sorry, curvy part of the 5. There's the curvy part of the hook. So a 5 looks like an upside down hook. All right, quick quiz. What's number 1? Tell me in the chat, by the way. Let's do a little review in our minds. Okay, now if you answered pencil, very good. What's number 2? Type it into the chat. Let's make this a little interactive here. 2, if you're, by the way, you don't have to type it in the chat, but you could just be thinking it. 2 is a swan. Very good. And I do see some people typing in the chat, so thanks for the interactivity. How about number 3? Number 3, what's the visual for number 3? Oh yeah. Might take you a moment because we just went over it. 3 is McDonald's, right? And then how about if I told you number 4? What's number 4? All right, did you think a chair? Yes, good. How about number 5? And of course, 5 is the hook. All right, let's go faster through these. The rest of, we just got to remember 10. That's the beauty of this system. You only got to remember 10 things. 6 is a cherry. You see, it's how this could be a cherry right here, and the stem coming out. Cherry. Number 7 is lightning. Do you see the 7s there? There's a 7, a big 7 over here. There's a smaller 7 at the bottom. 7 is lightning. So we got 6 equal to cherry, 7 equal to lightning, and 8 is going to be a racetrack. Even though it'd be kind of weird if they made racetracks like this, but just go with it. 8 is a racetrack. It's actually a very bad image I found. You see these 2 cars? It looks like they might be driving towards each other. Anyway, just go with it. 8 is our racetrack. 9 is going to be a balloon. You see that? Balloon with a little string coming out. And 10 is going to be a play setting. You know, like a plate and a spoon or a fork. It could be also it doesn't have to be a plate. It could be a bowl. But you see a 1 and a 0. Okay, quick little review of 6 through 10. What is number 6? Tell me in the chat, or think to yourself, or you could write all of them out if I'm going too slow for you. We're going to have to go a little faster here. 6 is a cherry. What's number 7? Review it in your head. What's 7? Predict the next image here. 7 is, of course, lightning. By the way, we're also doing this for repetition. 8, tell me 8. Number 8. All right, very good. That is a racetrack. How about number 9? I'm pausing just so you can enter the answers here. Number 9 is, of course, the cherry. I mean, not cherry. 6 is cherry. 9 is balloon. So you could always get these crisscrossed. 9 is balloon, and 10. Tell me 10. Very good. I see some people are just giving me all of them. They're like 6 is this, 7 is that, and 10 is the place setting. Okay, what do we do now? We got the success, baby, because you've successfully memorized 10 things. That was easy, actually. So 1 is a pencil, 2 is a swan. I could ask you out of order. I could be like, which one is the chair? What number is a chair? And you'd be like 4. What number is a cherry? The fruit, cherry. Oh yeah, that's 6. How about which one is the swan? 2. So I could go forwards or backwards. I could tell you the number or the image and you got them, right? So what we do now is we got to memorize things. What do we have to memorize? It could be practically anything. In our example here, it's going to be these brain rules. We're going to try to memorize all of these brain rules. So exercise is 1, survival is 2, wiring is 3, attention, short-term memory, long-term memory, sleep, stress, sensory integration, vision, music, and exploration. How? We got to associate each topic with its respective visual. So 1 in exercise, we got to find a way to combine exercise with pencil and associate it, but it has to be associated visually in our mind, and the visual has to be a little weird, okay, or exaggerated. So I'm going to give you the visuals I came up with because I already did this a while ago and I can remember my visuals. I want you to picture those same visuals in your head for this exercise. Okay, so here's how we're going to do it. For exercise, I want you to imagine you go to, there's a brand new gym that opens in your neighborhood. You walk by and you look in the windows and you notice something weird about this gym. Everybody at this gym is working out with pencils. Okay, there's somebody doing, not normal size pencils. These are large pencils. Somebody's doing curls with a pencil, someone else on the bench press with a pencil, someone else doing, maybe the shoulder press with a pencil. So imagine this strange gym. Maybe you're confused by this. That's how we're going to remember exercise. Number 2, we're going to memorize survival, but we got to associate it with a swan. I want you to imagine a swan struggling for survival in that it's drowning. Now that doesn't make any sense because this swan doesn't know how to swim. Swans should know how to swim. That's like a default setting on a swan. Imagine a swan that doesn't know how to swim. It's drowning. Maybe you feel bad for this poor swan, so you jump in the lake, try to save it. Now, the more detail you add to these images, the better. I grew up in Chicago, so what lake am I jumping into? I'm jumping into Lake Michigan or the Chicago River to save this poor swan. So be specific when you're thinking about these images. Okay, so you're trying to visually picture them in your mind. So I had an image here. I don't have an image for this one because I want you to do it in your head. Okay, swan that doesn't know how to swim and it is struggling for survival because it's drowning. 3 is McDonald's, right? We got to imagine or visualize it with wiring. I want you to imagine you go to McDonald's, you get like a Big Mac, and when you bite into the Big Mac, there's a piece of barbed wire in your Big Mac. Imagine how disgusting that would be, a piece of barbed wire in a Big Mac. Imagine how angry or biting into it, that would be painful. I'm asking you to imagine these emotions because your emotions play a part in how you remember too. Right? Isn't it true? People remember traumatic experiences really well because they're full of emotion. So Big Mac with barbed wire, the pain, the anger, the disgust. Imagine all that for wiring. 4 is attention. We got to associate it with a chair. Picture a chair that helps you pay attention. You see this creepy chair with the hands? Every time you're like studying or reading or doing work, anytime you like stop paying attention, the hands will kind of come over and tap you on the shoulder or tap you on the head. They'll give you a little nudge to pay attention. Very creepy. 5 is short-term memory. You got to associate it with a hook. Now hooks remind me, these kind of hooks remind me of pirates. So let's go the pirate route here. And I got to remember short-term memory. So picture some very short pirates, really short pirates, like babies or toddler pirates. And there's like 20 of them on a beach. They got shovels, they're digging for their buried treasure. They buried it last night. The problem is they can't remember where they buried it because they have short-term memory problems. Which is true. You know, kids that are like 1 or 2 years old, they're not going to remember much about, you know, their years as a 2-year-old or 3-year-old later on. So short-term memory problems, they're very short, they're pirates. That's how we're remembering 5. Now, if you do just a rerun through the memories here, 1 is a pencil. What does that remind you of? Of course, exercise, right? People working out with pencils. 2, tell me what number 2 is. Can you remember that one? 2 is the swan. That reminds you of the swan drowning, struggling for survival. 2 was survival. 3, that's McDonald's. And that reminds you of, oh yeah, the Big Mac with barbed wire. But the chapter is not called wire, it's called wiring. 4, that's a chair. Oh yeah, the chair with the creepy hands to help me pay attention. You see, that's how your process of memory should go. When you think about the 5, you think about a hook. That reminds you of pirates, really short pirates. And usually at that point, we've remembered, hopefully, oh, short pirates, short-term memory. All right, let's run through the rest of them. I think you guys get the idea here. 6 is long-term memory. We got to associate that with a cherry. I want you to imagine a cherry, but a cherry that has a super long stem. You see this cherry? Imagine if you were in the supermarket and you found a cherry like this with a ridiculously long stem. Now we got to remember long-term memory. This image doesn't have to do anything with memory. So long as I remember long, that'll remind me of long-term memory. 6 is the cherry with the long stem. Number 7, sleep. Got to associate 7 as a lightning bolt. Imagine you get a new alarm clock, okay, and you know the snooze button. When you hit when you hit the snooze button on this alarm clock, you actually get zapped by lightning. Okay, imagine that for 7. The snooze button while you're sleeping, getting zapped by lightning. It's to prevent us from hitting snooze over and over and over again. All right, and that's related to sleep, of course. 8 is stress. Remember I told you they'd never make a racetrack? 8 was a racetrack, right? Imagine they did make a racetrack with an intersection like this, and that's obviously very stressful. So imagine a stressful intersection like this at a racetrack, and imagine the race car drivers are sweating, they're kind of freaking out because they might crash. Imagine that for stress. 9, sensory integration. Now this term is a little more vague, right? But it's just about your 5 senses. Your 5 senses have images related to them, right? Your ability to see, touch, taste, smell, hear. Take all those body parts and let's put them inside of a giant balloon, something like this. But don't picture this cartoony balloon. Picture a huge balloon, like a see-through balloon. It's ginormous, and there's a hand in there, a tongue floating around, an eyeball, real body parts. The more disturbing you make it, the better, okay? By the way, what we're doing here is called elaborative encoding. That's the fancy name for it. But elaborative encoding just means come up with some weird images and you'll remember things better. So we got body parts in a balloon. What kind of body parts? The 5 senses. That's so we could remember sensory integration. 10 is vision. We got to associate that with a plate or a bowl, right? 10 was a place setting. I think you know what we're going to do here. If we got to associate vision with a plate or a bowl, what are we going to do here? Some of you know what my next slide is going to be. We're going to fill the bowl or the plate with, that's right, eyeballs. And don't picture this cartoony image. I want you to visualize in your head, take a moment and think about what would a bowl full of eyeballs really look like? I think they'd be kind of moist, kind of bloody, optic nerve still attached. Like I said, the more disturbing you make it, the better. We got to remember eyeballs. That's to remind us of vision. All right, so 6 through 10, if you have to remember it. 6 is obviously the cherry. That reminds you of the, oh yeah, the cherry with the long stem, long-term memory. 7 is lightning. Oh yeah, getting zapped by lightning when I hit snooze. That's related to sleep. 8 is a racetrack. Oh yeah, the race car's going around in that intersection, which was stressful. Stress is number 8. 9 becoming the balloon. 9 is a balloon. Oh yeah, balloon with body parts, right? Sensory, the 5 senses, sensory integration. And then 10, that was easy, a plate or a bowl. That's just vision, right? The bowl with eyeballs. So you get it, right? What if we got to get more than 10? Actually, in this case, we have 12 chapters in that book. So you got to remember 11 is music, 12 is exploration. What you do is you got to make a rule. Okay? You make a rule. Some people are like, oh, just 2 pencils here. 11, 12, make a pencil and a swan. No, don't do that. Because what if you had to remember 21 things? Now, if you had 12 or 21, the number 1 and 2, like pencil and swan, now we got to invert them. Now we have swan and pet. No, that's not scalable. So music and exploration, what you do is you make some sort of a rule. The rule can be anything you want, but it's going to apply to everything 11 through 20. Let me give you an idea of what that is. By the way, we're going to go like 5 minutes over on the time. Apologies for that. 11. The rule for 11 through 20 is going to be snow. This is totally arbitrary. By arbitrary, I mean I'm just making it up. It's not related to anything. It doesn't have to be snow. It could be rain. The rule could be related, images related to books or cars, celebrities, babies. You make a rule. Okay, so let's use snow as the rule. So we get 11. We're going to reuse the pencil. But the difference here is the image we come up with is going to have snow involved. And it's going to have the topic we got to memorize involved. With 12, we do the same thing. Swan is involved because we got a 2 here, right? We're going to use snow because that's our rule. And we're going to use whatever the topic is. What are the topics? We got music and exploration. So for music, I want you to imagine a composer. You know the baton that they use? Imagine it's a large pencil instead. And this composer is composing music outside in blizzard-like conditions. Maybe he's got the orchestra in front of him outside as well. Imagine a giant blizzard and a concert happening with this composer who has a pencil as his baton. 12, swan, snow, and an image for exploration. For me, I think of space exploration. So I'm going to use a swan as a spaceship, a swan-shaped spaceship. Try saying that 3 times fast. Swan-shaped spaceship. Swan-shaped spaceship. And then I need snow, okay? So let's make it snow. You see the snow there? We're just going to make it snow. Doesn't make sense. It should not be snowing in outer space. I know that. But we want images that don't make sense, that are exaggerated. So the way this is going to work later, when you got to remember, hey, what was 12? These are your clues. Swan, that's easy to remember because 12 has a 2 in it. Snow, that's easy to remember because that's just the rule we decided to use. So you just got to remember this third thing. Oh yeah, there was a swan, it was a giant spaceship, it was snowing in outer space. What do I associate space with? Oh yeah, I associate space with exploration. Now you might associate exploration, you might associate that with exploring like Mount Everest. What else can you think of for exploration? You can think of Dora the Explorer or Indiana Jones or exploring the oceans or a jungle. All of those are go with the image that first pops into mind. That's why I went with this. So you can quiz yourself later. See if you still remember the brain rules. You might be surprised that you might remember all of them. And you can even test this out of order. But if you got to remember more than 20 things, what are you going to do? Just make another rule. Got to remember more than 30? Make another rule. So this is how you can build up just memories. And you could reuse this over time, but where does this fall into this process? First, you inspect, get familiar with something, read a chapter, read the book. Now you're reading the material, but first you inspect to get the gist of it, the structure. Now we read, inquire is reflecting on the material, asking questions, inquire about what you've read. Okay, I might ask myself, what do I need to memorize? How am I going to store it? The numeric peg system, that is one method. This is not the only method. There are multiple methods out there. Actually, we have a memorization course that goes over all the various methods if you want to check that out. I mentioned to you guys yesterday, but if you're interested in it, tomorrow is what they call Cyber Monday. We've already updated our website to include, if you go to the website and you want to take an online course, by the way, you could also do a one-on-one class, But online courses, they're all now $40. This is heavily discounted. If you want to take one of those memory courses, you can look here. We're discounting it also because you've gotten some of this information already. We have other courses that we haven't talked about: note-taking, productivity with ChatGPT. We've got a mind mapping course, how to remember names. Or if you're interested in going deep on speed reading, I'd recommend one of these speed reading courses, maybe the mastery course. If you're interested in live classes, we do classes all over the world, mostly in the US, but we've done them in Singapore, London, Hong Kong, Barcelona. You can look for a class near you, or if you want to do a one-on-one with me or one of our other instructors, you can always go over here, book a one-on-one experience, or you can shoot me an email if you have questions. Now, oh my gosh, where did this time go? It is time for me to get going. Again, I appreciate all the questions. And if you do have additional questions, I am sharing my screen with my contact info, which is just paul@irisreading.com. I've got the handles for different social media platforms. Pick your poison. I said not really poison. You can use YouTube for good, or you can waste incredible amounts of time on YouTube, or you can use it as an educational tool. But all these areas, we are active on them, so feel free to follow, reach out. Appreciate all the good questions, and like I said, shoot me an email if any other questions pop up. I will. Those of you that have emailed me, I am going to work through those emails. It's just that I have a ton of them, and I don't know if anybody's seen this. Maybe when I've been talking with my hands, this little pink bracelet. My wife gave birth to some twins recently, but they were born early, and they are in the intensive care unit. So it's a neonatal intensive care unit, or NICU. And this is just, it's not me breaking out of the psych ward. This is me to visit my kids in there. They're going to be there for a few weeks, unfortunately, but they're doing good. They're stable, and I'm going to be there for the afternoon. And then late afternoon, early evening, I will get to those emails. But thank you all so much for attending. Hope you have a great rest of the weekend and a great holiday if we don't talk. I see some congrats in the thank you so much. But I just want to let people know, because sometimes you wear a bracelet. When I see people wearing bracelets like this, I assume that they just got out of the psych ward or something like that. But it's not always true, apparently. Sometimes people just gave birth. I didn't give birth, but my wife did. So anyway, thank you all so much for attending. Thank you all for the congratulations. I'll see you next time. We got another webinar coming up tomorrow, so I'll see you tomorrow, if anything, and I'll reply to those emails when I get to them. Have a great day. Take care.